Obsession is the little horror indie that could, looking at a potential $100 million in box office on a reported $750,000 budget. But how did it happen? How does something like this clear six digits when we have seen massive blockbusters that cost $100 million not make that money back? Well, today, I'm going to go through what worked for Obsession and why it is proving to be so successful. Most importantly, I'm going to tell you what you can apply from this film to find success in your own project. But I must warn you, much like that One Wish Willow from the movie, just because you know exactly what you want, it might have disastrous outcomes. I came into this movie knowing nothing. I had not heard of Curry Barker before this movie, nor did I know what this movie was about. All I knew is that it was tremendously successful for its budget, something we haven't seen since Paranormal Activity or the Blair Witch Project. And I'll tell you the truth, I was a little worried when the movie started because the opening scene is the weakest part of the movie, and one thing in particular terrified the filmmaker and me the most: continuity errors. During the first scene, Michael Johnson and Cooper Tomlinson, who play Baron and Ian respectively, are working out how Baron is going to ask out Nikki while sitting at a diner. There's a little misdirection up front with the waitress, but once the two friends are sitting at the table, there's a glass of soda sitting next to Ian on the table that has a straw in it, and the straw is bouncing around all different directions between cuts. And many times there is a cut from one angle to the other that is continuous, meaning that even though the camera changes perspective, the dialogue continues. So both angles are meant to be in real time, but the straw goes from opposite ends of the drink in between those shots. At that moment, I was worried because it's not me being persnickety. Things like this have an effect on an audience because even if you don't notice it directly, the fact that it is happening, even subconsciously, makes you feel uneasy. I started wondering if it was on purpose, not in like a Robin Hood Men in Tights kind of way, but maybe something scary was going to happen because of the drink. I don't know, but I was thrown by it. I was paying more attention to the straw than I was to what was happening in the scene, which is also tough because that scene is a little disjointed with the head fake and the demeanor of Baron. If this movie was on streaming instead of in theaters, I might have turned it off at that point, which is tough to hear, but online where the hook can come so fast, you need to start with your best foot forward. The good news is that the movie course corrected quickly, and overall it was off to the races without incident from there on out. That leads to the first reason for its success. It nailed the tone. From scene 2 onward, I knew what movie I was watching. And this sounds easy, but it's actually exceedingly difficult. If you had a goofy buddy cop movie and you shot it like an episode of Law & Order, people watching will feel off balance. They won't know exactly what they are watching. This movie puts you in right away, and part of the reason the audience gets it so quickly is because it is a tried and true story told straight. The movie is basically the monkey paw. You find the mystical thing, it grants wishes, but the wishes always go wrong. On top of that, it is in the horror genre where the audiences are more forgiving of a story told before, as long as what you do with the story is something rewarding for the audience. And rewarding is different for every movie and every audience, which makes the tone so crucial for convincing the crowd that they are in stable hands. The horror moments in this film are varied from gross horror to gore to violence to the unexpected surprise. A lot of unsuccessful horror movies give it all the same way, like every scare is a jump scare, and it gets boring fast. By mixing it up with the carefully crafted tone allows moments to feel more earned. If I had to give one quick and easy reason why the movie worked so well, it was because the game plan was executed perfectly, and everything that they tried worked. This is not to say that the plan going in was perfect or that the movie is a perfect film, but rather that everything happened to break their way, which I realize can sound confusing, so let me try and explain. Every filmmaker goes into a film with a plan of how things are going to go, but the problem is that something always goes wrong somewhere. Maybe it's the perfect location that falls through, or the day of the big emotional scene your lead has a migraine and the performance is lacking. These things happen, and a lot of the ability as a filmmaker is finding ways to make the movie work when something stands in your way. A lot of times you are watching a movie and something about a scene just doesn't work. Can't put your finger on it, but there is a disturbance in how things were drawn up going in. Now think about your life when you had a day where everything happened exactly as you planned, where luck was on your side. You probably didn't win the lotto or run into your celebrity crush, but everything happened to work out for you that day. They say that success is the combination of luck and talent, and the success of the movie is having capable people in the right places at the right moment. I'm sure if we asked Curry, there were dozens of things that didn't happen the way he drew them up. But the luck often shows up when things don't go as planned, but in the end work out. I mentioned earlier the one thing you could apply to your film, but the consequences might not be what you expect. It's that everything in this film just worked out. The rub is that there is no way to plan for that. You don't break a one-wish willow and say, over the next 20 days, this shoot, everything is going to work out. Top of mind in terms of things working out is the cast. Low-budget indies, especially the ones under $1 million, are cast by actors who, for whatever reason, are viewed as less valuable assets to the studio world. That doesn't mean that you can't find talent there, because many times a successful indie can catch the wave of a star in the making. I remember this with a low-budget indie called Like Crazy that had Anton Yelchin, Felicity Jones, Chris Messina, and Jennifer Lawrence. Jennifer Lawrence, if I remember correctly, was barely in the movie, and most of her work ended up in the trailer to help get more attention to the film, like she's a major character. I don't know if we have the next Felicity Jones or Jennifer Lawrence in Obsession, but the value of the performances we got from this cast far exceeded whatever was on their paycheck. And when you have a cast without household names, that's the ball game. Michael Johnston is our lead as Baron, or Bear as he's mostly called. He plays Bear neurotic, socially awkward, and uncharismatic, which from a character standpoint is a tough needle to thread in this genre, with the story revolving around him and his desires, which can be hard for him to articulate. In a world where we try and see something of ourselves in the lead character, he feels more like us at our most rudderless. I think acting-wise, he is hitting all the notes it needs to be, but for his character, I would have liked to see more of a transformation when he ends up with Nikki. In this movie, there is a small montage that shows the two of them doing cute couple things, which is showing the relationship at its high points. But I think more could have been done to show a real transformation in Bear before the horror of this courtship makes him unravel back into the ball of nerves he was before. Problematic relationships aside, a new girlfriend, especially one with someone you've had such deep feelings for, really changes a man. That girlfriend, Nikki, is played by Inde Navarte. Bear has a big-time crush on Nikki, but he is incapable of making the move. So when he finds the one-wish willow, he breaks it as instructed and asks for her to fall in love with him. At which point, Nikki is now obsessed with Bear and can't function without him. The levels of obsession are what leads to the horror, because you never want someone to be that in love with you. Inde does a great job in this movie because she plays these opposite poles so well, with her before the wish being radiant and enchanting, and after the wish being psychotic and unhinged. Never does it feel too much, and the acting from Inde was truly great. I see big things ahead for her if things break right. I mentioned it earlier, Bear's best friend, played by Cooper Tomlinson. Director Curry Barker and Tomlinson have been longtime collaborators, and there is an ease to the way that Cooper is used, which would feel familiar if you look at performances of other actors and directors that work together frequently. As a director, when you know someone as a performer so well, it really allows you to work in almost a shorthand. And you feel like you can communicate what you want easier and also know how to make space to allow the best version of the actor to shine. In Ian, he plays it kind of like a simple brute, the type you would imagine would go on to great things at some hard-partying fraternity. But there's a real interesting performance happening subtly behind the walls that Ian constructs to protect himself from his own insecurities. I feel bad that this is all I know him from, because I would be interested in seeing his range. Megan Lawless plays Sarah, and she rounds out our foursome. All of the characters work together at a music store and have friendships from outside of work. I thought she did a great job, though her character didn't have as much to do with moving the plot forward as much as she was filling in the world for all the other characters. I don't want that to sound demeaning, because it's really important for the characters and the movie overall that she feels like a cherished member of the friend group. She has great moments with her worries about getting accepted into art school, and has a tremendous gruesome moment, which was played perfectly. It's hard to play that part. That is the spot where a lesser talented actor becomes an anchor that drags everyone down. But she does a great job. Sarah really ties this friend group together. We get a true Curry Barker film here, as Curry is the writer, director, and editor on Obsession. I must admit, when I, Corey Baker, first heard of this movie and director Curry Barker, I felt like I was introduced to my Wario. I joke, but I would say that I appreciate that he is so young and doing so well because it feels a little bit like a path in the woods not taken for me. I've always felt held on to things too much. I wish I could find myself to push things out there. I'm thinking about me for one more second, I promise. But part of coming back to YouTube and doing this felt in part like the push I needed to put myself out there more. Like I touched on previously, I think this movie caught a special moment, and Curry and his collaborators were all ready to ride the wave at the exact right moment, and now here we are. And it all just works. I had a good time watching it. The movie feels way more expensive than it is, which is high praise for him as a director. And as a writer, I appreciated that the dialogue was never overwritten, but was also never phoned in. There's a thing in indies when you just don't have the answer for certain lines and you do draft after draft and you end up with something that works but doesn't really land. There was hardly a moment of that in this movie. I really appreciate the edit a lot too because horror is so much about the pace and where things breathe and building to the moment of the scare. It's not as easy for an editor in town to do right. And he has a great feel for it. Again, the tone of this movie is so well honed, and it really shows in all three jobs for Curry. Like I said, the plot is a monkey paw, so one wish with disastrous results. And this movie stays true to the bones of that while still giving you something that feels new. I don't know how much he played with different ideas of how Bear and Nikki's relationship would play out, but I do feel like I would have liked to see a little bit more of a honeymoon phase feeling. I fear if you leaned too much into it that it would affect the pace and rhythm of the movie, but I feel that if I told you that your crush suddenly started acting like they liked you, most people would make a bigger move once they knew. I mean, if Nikki is saying she wants to come home with me, and then she wants to sleep in my bed with me, and then she is in her bra next to me, I don't see how I'm not making the move. Once I've made the move, and it's been greeted warmly, I don't see how I don't push it and see what she is into. I could understand if Bear has a moral code he lives by where he doesn't sleep with someone right away, but he doesn't get that from Bear. Just that he doesn't have the moves to make it happen without all the signs from Nikki. I mean, I can be clueless when a girl is flirting with me or putting out the vibe, but once she is half naked in my bed after inviting herself over, that's laid on pretty thick. Even the nerdiest dweeb who has ever geeked will recognize the moment and make the move. Again, you might add 20 minutes to the movie if you went down that path, and it would change so many things. So I feel like maybe my wish would lead to unintended consequences, which is ironic, don't you think? I wish it was time for the leaderboard. I should have wished for something else. Anywho, we're here. I really liked Obsession, but I don't imagine that it will rank high on any best horror movies lists. Compared to the other low-budget Goliaths I mentioned earlier, both Blair Witch and Paranormal Activity were cultural moments, and both of them were touch points for a long time after they came out. Not to mention that $100 million then was a lot harder to reach compared to $2026. Both of those movies spun off into multiple sequels and spin-offs and merchandise, etc. I don't imagine we could do an Obsession 2, and honestly, I think Curry is in a great spot to do something different for whatever follows this. If I had to give Obsession a rating, I would give it a 7.6. But that's not quite it, is it? It's not fair to rate horror movies on the regular leaderboard, but instead on the Fast and the Furious leaderboard. For those of you who are new, the Fast and the Furious leaderboard is for movies that are about fun and not winning awards. The score gets adjusted with its peers on its list and given a score based on how much fun I had watching it. If I had to give Obsession a rating, I would give it an 8.2. I mean, at the end of the day, if someone asked me directly if they should go see it, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say I had a good time and it was worth it seeing it in theaters. I can't imagine I would have anything critical to say, but it's a standalone movie that works, but it isn't transcendent. For real, I would be happy if we got more movies like this. No expectations of sequels or cross-promotion with Denny's, just a fun horror movie that is just scary enough and just gross enough not to scare away the casuals. That is it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I think I'm going to do Backrooms next week. So let me know what you think about that movie coming out. And I can't wait to see you then. Thank you so much.